Good evening. My name is Steve Kaufman. I am an engine company captain with the Ventura County Fire Department, and I serve as the Public Information Officer for CAL FIRE Incident Management Team 4. I'm coming to you live from the Silver Dollar Fairgrounds here in Chico, from the North Complex West Zone. This is the operational briefing / virtual community meeting on this 10th day of September 2020, 6:01 p.m. Just a reminder that this meeting will be live streamed on the CAL FIRE Butte County Facebook, the CAL FIRE Facebook page, and the Butte County Sheriff's Facebook page. I want to start with some confusion over names. And I'm going to start with an explanation, and hopefully you can follow me on this. There were two fires up in the Plumas National Forest. One was called the Claremont Fire. One was called the Bear Fire. When those fires merge, they take on the name of the largest fire. The largest fire was the Bear Fire, so the entire fire got called the Bear Fire. Both of those fires were in what we call the North Complex. For a little bit of history, when there's a lot of fires in the state of California and they assign an incident management team to manage those fires, when there's multiple fires in an area, they will call it a complex. So that fire was called the North Complex. In the early hours, when the fire was pressing into Butte County, they were using terms like bear fire or bear contingency. We have completely renamed and taken the bear fire or bear contingency out of the equation for to reduce the confusion. So going forward, it will be known as the North Complex, and when we speak about the fire that is directly affecting Butte County, it will be known as the North Complex West Zone. I hope that clears up any confusion. From the fire side, you will not see anything come out of us that says bear fire or bear contingency, and I encourage all of our cooperators and anybody that's posting on social media to just use North Complex or North Complex West Zone to refer to this fire. We have made a little bit of headway today as far as getting information out into the public. Before this press conference, there is a slideshow if you go to that Facebook page, and it has a slide that just has addresses of information boards out in the community where you can go and look at a board. There will be a map on that board, and there will also be a morning fact sheet on that board with all the current stats of the fire. There are boards currently placed in Paradise, in Magalia, and at both of the temporary evacuation centers that are set up. If you look on that slideshow, either before or after the press conference, you'll be able to see those addresses of those boards. That's the best place to get information other than this press conference nightly. Let's go right into the numbers. I'm going to start with overall state numbers. There are currently over 14,000 firefighters across the state of California battling fires. Over 29 major fires or complexes. Assigned on those to those fires, those firefighters are staffing over 2,200 fire engines, over 250 fire crews, over 219 dozers, over 300 water tenders, and since yesterday there were 37 new fires. Our current total acreage burned for the entire state of California is over 2.6 million acres burned. For the North Complex West Zone, we're currently showing at 65,295 acres, 0% contained. I want to talk real quick about our damage inspection. Yesterday I gave you some numbers. I'm going to repeat those numbers today. It looks like there was a little confusion. There's over 4,200 total structures in the West Zone that were threatened. Approximately 2,000 structures from a damage assessment, a windshield damage assessment that was done yesterday, were either damaged or destroyed. Our damage assessment team is currently putting their plan together. The word that I got today was that they're going to be wheels on the road tomorrow to do very thorough damage assessments of the damage in the area. What I ask is that you be patient with us. We want to get accurate numbers to you. As those numbers start coming in, we will give you the numbers daily as they start coming in, but that will start tomorrow. Now for the most current operational update from the Operations Section Chief.
Good evening. Shane Lauderdale, Operations Section Chief with CAL FIRE Incident Management Team 4. I am one of the Operations Section Chiefs responsible for the west zone of the North Zone complex. And I will start by orienting us to the map here. And I'll begin in the north in the Big Bend area, and then come down to the Berry Creek community, to the Kelly Ridge community over here, and to Feather Falls community. And with that reference, I can kind of show you what the extent of the fire perimeter is. So, with that massive fire perimeter, our firefighters throughout this today, through this operational period, have focused once again today on protecting any structures that are threatened and ensuring that those areas are made safe. With that extremely large perimeter, we have had limited ability to begin what we call perimeter control. However, with that, we have began and had some success in beginning perimeter control to the east of Kelly Ridge in the Stringtown area. And I just want to spend some time talking about that because that particular area of Stringtown Road is challenging. And we have dozers in there right now, crews in there right now, trying to cut that off. Until we get that area completely cut off and contained, we will not be able to assure that there is safety in the Kelly Ridge area. And we'll continue to monitor that and work on that area through the next operational periods. As we look at Feather Falls, again, that was heavily impacted by that first run of fire. Therefore, the structures that are in there that were saved, we focused our energy today on ensuring that they were saved, mopping up around those structures, and finding any hot spots that are located in that area. At the same time, the personnel assigned to this area, the branch director, began to plan and started building a direct fire line where possible. As we move over into the Big Bend area, as we speak, the fire has moved to and is threatening the infrastructure on Bloomer Hill. We have operations going on right now to try to protect that infrastructure and prevent damage to our communication system. As you can see, the fire has crossed the river into Big Bend, and if you've been in that area, it is extremely steep. There's literally cliffs in much of the area around the lake, and therefore a challenging area to fight fire. But our firefighters are building a plan right now to work on the fire in that area.
Good evening. My name is Dan Borsum, and I'm the incident meteorologist assigned to support the firefighting efforts. Smoke was the dominant feature today. It produced so much sun shading that we ended up with significantly reduced temperatures that actually kept the humidity a little bit higher. There is high pressure that is dominating the region. In general, that keeps our wind patterns relatively weak, and it also does trap the smoke. Speaking about the wind, the main influence they're going to experience is upslope, up valley during the daytime hours, and then they'll switch to downslope, down valley during the nighttime. There's no fronts or any other mechanisms to disrupt that pattern. There is a little bit of cool air over the Great Basin, and that is going to support Wind gusts up to 15 miles an hour at night, but that is substantially lower than what we have been seeing in previous weeks. Looking ahead the next couple of days, there is really not much to change the weather pattern. This means the smoke will continue to be dominant across the region. The winds will remain light. The one thing about the smoke is it does cause impacts on the aircraft that might be operating over the fire. A little bit further out, later in the weekend, there will be a pattern change, but it's not significant. But it might be enough to generate a little bit of clearing, which will raise temperatures and cause winds to be just a little bit stronger, in particular during the upslope and up valley period of the afternoon. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Captain Derek Bell from the Butte County Sheriff's Office. Sheriff Honey was called away due to a family emergency tonight. So I will be talking to you about the ongoing efforts by the Butte County Sheriff's Office in regards to this fire in our community. Currently, we continue to utilize mutual aid resources provided by law enforcement agencies from across Northern California that are assisting in providing security patrol in the areas that remain under evacuation orders. We would like to share our gratitude for the many law enforcement officers who are in Butte County tonight keeping our community safe. We want to say thank you to them. I'd like to update you on the evacuation orders and warnings for those affected by this fire. One adjustment we've made today, this evening, the evacuation order for the area between Foothill Boulevard and Oakville Avenue in Orville has been reduced to an evacuation warning. Now, we would like to remind everyone that even though that small portion has been reduced to an evacuation warning, we really encourage everyone to remain diligent as to their surroundings, their safety, and understand that circumstances can change very rapidly, and they need to stay up to date with news, with our orders, and make sure they pay attention to any kind of guidance from first responders. All other evacuations and evacuation warnings remain in place. For information, a complete list of remaining evacuation orders and warnings can be found at www.buttecounty.net. In these areas, I want to remind everyone as well, especially for the citizens who have evacuated, that all of our patrols, like I mentioned, we have agencies from around Northern California assisting us in this to patrol those areas that have been evacuated. We have many, many law enforcement officers who are dedicated to doing that right now. And hopefully we will not find any kind of incidents of looting, trespassing, theft, things of that nature. But if it does occur, we will be on top of it. We've received reports from incident safety officers of CAL FIRE who said that members of the media may be entering private properties and walking through destroyed homes. We've also been told that members of the media have been blocking roadways and inhibiting firefighting and public safety efforts. Due to that, we ask that members of the media please respect our first responders' efforts, the efforts of our firefighting partners, and stay off the properties, and please don't block the roadways. They inhibit all the operations, and it can be really detrimental to their efforts. So we're trying to get everyone information, the most up-to-date information, as fast as possible. That's why we're all here tonight. And we're also trying to make sure that all first responders are able to do their job, so we ask for that cooperation. Now I'd like to update you in our efforts to locate those who have been reported as unaccounted for and reports of welfare checks that we receive. To date, the Butte County Sheriff's Office has responded to 124 calls for service for citizens requesting welfare checks on their loved ones or to report that they haven't heard from them. Our detectives and deputies have worked around the clock and have successfully located 98 people. We continue our ongoing efforts to locate the 16 people who remain unaccounted for at this point. We urge anyone with questions or to report either a loved one missing or that they have located their loved one to call 530 538 7671. Our list of accounted for people is rapidly changing and evolving as we aggressively work to locate these people and reunite them with their loved ones. Now for the unfortunate part of what I'm asked to talk about is our discovery of human remains. It's with great sadness that we have to report an additional 7 deceased individuals were located by our deputies and detectives today. That brings the total number of lives lost in this tragic fire to 10. We're still investigating the circumstances of these deaths, and we want to make sure that the notification to next of kin is done in as most respectful manner as we can do it. Due to that, we won't be releasing any information tonight as we continue the investigations and work to positively identify these individuals and notify the next of kin. We again offer our heartfelt condolences to the loved ones of the victims who have lost their lives in this devastating fire. Finally, information in regards to our search and recovery efforts. A team of anthropologists from Chico State University are assisting our detectives with searching areas impacted by the fire for human remains and will continue for the duration of this event. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Messina. I'm the Butte Unit in the Butte County Fire Department Fire Chief. And as you heard tonight, we have had a slight moderation in weather, which in turn created a slight moderation in the fire behavior that we experienced today. We still have a massive amount of fire line out in the west zone. Portions of that fire remain extremely active. And I think you're going to hear this throughout the incident about staying vigilant. And what we're asking is those individuals that are within the evacuation warning area, we're asking that you stay vigilant. Situation can change, and it can change immediately. And I'll give you an example. On September 8th, we were notified of a fire below Bucks Lake that escaped its control line, which was the Bear Fire. Less than 18 hours later, it traveled 30 miles into Butte County. So we want to make sure that people understand that even though that the fire behavior is moderated, there's still a high potential with the open line that the fire could spread, and it could spread rapidly. As firefighters continue to defend and establish control lines, it'll be slow. The terrain's difficult. The weather is hot. And as I said, there's a massive amount of control line to put in. And we're going to ask a little bit of patience from everyone on those areas that are evacuated, and especially those ones in the evacuation warnings or order areas that aren't within the footprint of the burned area. And I will tell you, we've been getting a lot of phone calls about when's the power coming back on, when are we going to be able to get back into our community, the fire's not here. And believe me, our firefighters are working their tails off to mitigate this emergency so we can get some normalcy back into these communities. But for those of you outside of the impact area, the fire area, being evacuated is an inconvenience. Those within the fire area, what they've gone through has been completely devastating to them. So I want to remind the public, for those that are outside that area, have a little patience while we attend to those that need it the most. Thank you.
Okay, I was monitoring the questions that were coming through on the feed, so we're going to try to talk about some of those. The way we'll do this is I will address the specific discipline. I'll let the media give their first shot at it. Then I will bring up the questions that we have for those disciplines. from the comments that we saw, and then we'll move on to the next discipline. And before we start that, though, I want you to know that as the questions were coming in before the speakers came up, if I saw a question for one of those disciplines, like there was a question on patrolling, looking out for looting, I gave that to the sheriff's department so they could address it when they came up here. So some of those questions might not be in the form of a question right now, but I gave it to the discipline before they came up and talked about it. So why don't we start, are there any questions from our media that are here live for the sheriff's department?
Sorry, can you repeat that, please? At this point, I know it's still at least 23 agencies, because those agencies that we had responding and assisting yesterday are still helping. The exact number, I'm not sure of. And as far as you asked about federal funding, generally we will reach out to get any kind of funding that can help with these events, including that. So that's something that we'll be working on. But like I said before, we have many, many agencies helping us. Okay?
Regarding the deceased, can you tell us where they were living? Were they all in one area? Were they spread out across the entire region?
So, like I mentioned, I'm not going to comment on any of that because our detectives, our deputies are still trying to gather information, positively identifying the remains that they got and notifying next of kin. I don't want any information to come out here that could lead someone to believe that it may be a loved one of theirs incorrectly. I don't want that to happen. So out of respect for them, like I said, I'm not going to elaborate on any of that information.
What about the missing? Say where their reports have come from, that they were supposed to be missing?
Well, that list is changing. That list is changing so rapidly. There are locations of various areas. And like I said, our personnel are working so hard on that list gets chiseled down as quickly as it gets built up. So it's a very, very much a living document that I couldn't nail down any specifics on it, at least right now.
We spoke to some evacuees today that told us that they were prevented from returning. They were trying to get in and get some of their loved ones out, but they were stopped, prevented. Is that accurate for deputies? Or I don't know if this is a question for you or for Cal Fire.
Like during the incident?
Yeah, preventing people from going, they say they were going to try to pull, some of the.
Right. Well, I can't comment on any one specific thing, but if the area is of such a nature at the time, if the fire is in such an area that it's too dangerous for even first responders to get into, yeah, out of safety measures, we will restrict people from getting in there. But that's why we urge people to notify us, use a 911 system to contact us so that we can get those areas, and if it's at all possible, we'll do what we can, coordinate with CAL FIRE and any other agencies to try and help, if it's possible. Sometimes the fire is such a nature that's too dangerous to even make an attempt.
And can you describe for us what you're seeing in these areas, like Berry Creek or Feather Falls? Is it just widespread devastation? Is there, everything's gone? And what's it like when you're out there looking?
Well, it's sad. That's about as clear as I can put it. I haven't had a chance to go up there just yet. I've been coordinating things down in the valley and such, but, just like the campfire, fire does very devastating things to areas.
And one more question about the deceased, I'm sorry. But I know you can't say where they were found. Can you say if they were all found in the same area without saying what area?
No. I just, like I said, I don't want to elaborate on any of that. So I'd hate to hurt anyone that could make assumptions by any of that information that I got out without them having the opportunity to be notified properly, respectfully, and all that.
Any injuries to deputies?
At this point, I don't believe so, not that I know of, thank goodness.
Just two questions. One, of the people who are currently camping in the Berry Creek area who were not able to leave at the time, do you know how many are still up there or sheltering in another spot, or do you have any more information about them?
No, no, I
Okay,
don't.
and then my other question is, of the, sorry, can you confirm the growth of the fire in the last 24 hours and how much of that was due to fire fuel in the area? So earlier, the
The
operations
growth of the
chief-
fire?
Yeah, growth of fire based on the fuel in the area.
It sounds like a question for fire, I wouldn't be able to answer that.
A quick question, just probably clarification. You said 124 welfare checks?
Yes,
98 of those individuals found, so is that not 26 people who are missing? But you said 16?
that's right. 90, I believe the correct number is 98 people were located.
Or 90, I'm sorry, 98, right, located.
Right, so that would be 20, correct,
6, but you said 16 remain.
correct,
You mean 26 missing?
Yeah.
Or you do mean 26?
yeah.
Okay, and then,
And again, that list, pretty good odds that that number has changed already.
Constant, yeah, no,
right.
no, I understand the nature of it.
Right.
And there was one individual reported a massive effort to find a 16-year-old boy in Berry Creek early Wednesday
Uh-huh.
night, and was that boy found? That his name's all over
You
the
know,
place?
like I said, I don't want to elaborate on details that I'm not sure about.
Okay.
And that list is changing so rapidly. I'm gonna, like I said, I don't want to make any comments that I could be incorrect about. Does that make sense? So,
It does. It was just so high profile that if that search had ended, it'd be nice to note it, but
we'll provide information as soon as we get it.
thank you.
For damage assessments, do you know if you'll be doing those block by block and when that starts tomorrow?
Any others?
The last one was, can you speak to emergency evacuation, notification,
The last question, I believe, came from online was how any kind of power shutoffs could affect notification efforts on our behalf. And specifically speaking, I don't know if any power shutoffs that were in the areas that we were evacuating or warning directly affected anyone, but in general, some of the notifications we put out are in the form of email, things like that, that would require Wi-Fi for somebody to run their computer. If they don't have electricity, then they may be missing that. So in theory, it could hamper it. Do I know that that occurred here for sure? No. But in general, it could. Thank you.
Okay, so let's just go over the rules of engagement real quick. So we're going to go questions by discipline, and so it needs to either deal with firefighting, we can speak to damage assessment, we cannot speak to, for the next speaker, we cannot speak to sheriff, we cannot speak to weather, we cannot speak to anything but fire and damage assessment. So I'm going to bring our operations section chief up for the media. And if the media has any questions for the operations section chief. Anybody, you got a damage assessment question? Yep, so the question was specifically about damage assessment, how they take place and when they start, correct? So the damage assessment teams have been putting together their plan today. They will start damage assessment tomorrow, and they have an organized strategy to begin that. I can't tell you if it's going to be block by block, but they have an organized system of conducting that, and that will start tomorrow. Does that answer your question? Okay. Any questions for the operations section chief specific to what the fire is doing?
But this kind of goes back to damage.
Okay, yep.
That same question I asked the sheriff, I was wondering if you can kind of give us a sense of what you're
So I haven't been out there, but from the dashboard, they gave us the number, the 2,000 damaged or destroyed structures. The operations section chief can talk to you about like what some of the stuff that we've seen fire-wise. I'll bring him up right now. He also has a couple questions on note cards that we've gotten offline. He'll tell you what the question is, and then he'll answer the question appropriately. Our operations section chief.
So the question, I think, was exactly what kind of damage we have seen from the fire?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So as your fire chief, Chief Messina, described, the fire made a historic run through the crowns of timber. This is a fire that is impossible to fight directly, and as it moved through those communities, it made a run like we have described that's historic. And therefore, many of the structures that were impacted, we've got the numbers of how many are estimated to be damaged, were destroyed in the path of the fire. So you can look at the fire perimeter and be sure that there was damage in those areas. We have not assessed exactly where it is or exactly where those homes are, but we'll continue to do that. Yeah, the fire is in the entire perimeter of the fire, with a few exceptions, is in areas where there is heavy fuel because of the nature of the terrain and topography and vegetation that's native to those areas. And therefore, that does cause difficulty in suppressing fires. We are also in September, and so we've had a warm, very warm summer that has taken the fuels to a critical level where any area resist, what we say is resist control. So we will continue to be challenged.
Or I could just shout. Thank you. Shane, thank you. As was noted here tonight, the Bear Fire essentially was a offshoot of another fire, and then the Run is an offshoot essentially of the west zone of the Bear Fire taking off. There's been some criticism among lawmakers that Forest Service and CAL FIRE, had let the Bear Fire smolder, but my understanding of the situation is these are not controllable situations. And given the youth of the fire season, here's my question, what is the concern about the next month and a half or so to continued northeast driven canyon fires tearing off of any kind of ember that's available?
Well, first of all, California has a fire ecology, and California has long summers. This is no exception. And in those summers, we experience devastating fires. This year, unfortunately, has not been an exception. And so all firefighters are dedicated to doing everything they can to protect your communities and to extinguish fires, and we'll continue to do that.
But I'm addressing specifically these wind-driven events, such as what we saw with Paradise, which was much later in the year. We're still so early in the fire season. We're just getting into those weather patterns to set off those sorts of fires. Is that not correct?
That is correct. All right, so we have some questions that were asked, and specifically about Kelly Ridge. And as I described, we at this point are extremely happy to report that Kelly Ridge proper has not been impacted by fire. It has not crossed that drainage. However, as I described, that line that needs to be completed at Stringtown is an area that we will continue to focus on, because until that is done, we are not out of danger of fire moving south and then wrapping around and impacting that community. So it has to remain in this evacuation order for the safety of anyone that could be challenged by a fire that escapes our control at this point. The other question is about the communication towers on Bloomer Hill and what the impacts of damage to them are. Well, at this point, we, as I said, have resources in doing point protection on those towers, and we are hopeful that that will avoid any damage to the communication system. In the event that there is damage, we have redundancy built into the system and will utilize that. Another question about where the fire is in reference to the communities that are west of the Feather River and Highway 70. Right now, as the sheriff and as your fire chief described, everyone has to be vigilant and continue to watch what is happening with our fire. But with that said, we have very carefully evaluated the threats to the fire crossing the 70 corridor or the Feather River, and at this point have not issued or have not worked with the sheriff to issue evacuation warnings or have found that there is an immediate threat to any of those communities. And we will continue to monitor that as we fight this fire.
I have one last online question for you, Chief, and it's specific to what's going on with our air operations today.
Well, the smoke is it is a blessing and a malediction. The blessing is that the smoke cools us as it has today, and under that cooling air, firefighters are able to make a great deal of progress and have today, and we'll hope that through the night they'll make more progress and we'll have some good things to report to you tomorrow about the progress they've made. The flip side of that is aircraft do not fly well in zero visibility, and therefore we have not been able to use helicopters today because there was so much smoke in the areas we would have needed to use them.
Thank you, Chief. I want to bring the Sheriff's Department back up just to clarify some comments from earlier.
Just a quick clarification in regard to the numbers. The numbers are correct. It was 124 calls for service requesting the welfare checks. 98 people have been located. 16 remain on the list. The other 10 are the deceased that were located. Thank you.
Okay, for our media folks, does anybody have any questions for our fire meteorologist? Any questions for our fire meteorologist? All right, there are no questions online. And then, does anybody have any questions for the Butte County Fire Chief, Messina? Any questions for the fire chief? All right. I have one question that I'm holding on to. There was a couple questions like this. It's specific to, somebody asked their house is completely burned down that they heard, and they want to know when they're going to be able to go back. And I want to remind you that we're still less than 48 hours into this fire siege, and there's still a lot of work going on out there. There's a lot of firefighting going on out there, and I encourage folks to be patient with us. It's going to take us a little bit of time to make it safe for folks to get back into that area, but more importantly, while our firefighters are in that area engaging in firefight, it's not going to be in the cards. So I just encourage the public to be patient with us, and like I have promised, we have looked at the comments. We have been attentive to the comments. We're trying to answer the questions that you have. I understand with the ability not being able to do a community meeting, this is in place of that, and we really do want to get you the most accurate information possible. With that being said, this press conference will be followed in 10 minutes by a Spanish language version of the press conference. So for those of you that are tuning in right now that would like a Spanish language version of the press conference, it will follow approximately 10 minutes when this concludes. After this concludes, there will still be that slideshow presentation with the information boards and other pertinent information. I encourage you to look at that, and as the days go on, we'll add stuff to that. based on the stuff that we find out and the stuff that we hear. I also encourage you, if you have any question about any of the fires in California right now, to go to fire.ca.gov. The addresses are right behind me on that board. There's also a phone number if you have any fire information for this fire. When you go to fire.ca.gov, there's a little area that says incidents. Go to the incidents tab, click on 2020, and it will have a map of the state of California. And then there's little flames all over that map. The flame that you're interested in is close to your house. Click on that flame, and it will have all the current information on that specific fire. And then, as with every press conference that we have, we talk about our readyforwildfire.org website. If you want to know how to prepare your home, your family, your friends, your neighbors in the event of a wildfire that strikes your area, go to that website. It has information on our Ready, Set, Go program, and it also has information on how to prepare your family. I just remembered there was some confusion about some of our numbers. So let me go over some numbers real quick one more time with you. These are just the acreage numbers for the North Complex West Zone. So the part of the fire that lies in Butte County, 65,295 acres, 0% contained. I expect some numbers to come out for the entire fire shortly. I don't have those numbers. They weren't ready when we prepared this press conference, but those will come out shortly. So for the Butte area, which is the North Complex West Zone, 65,295 acres, 0% contained, and there were some questions still about the Bear Fire. The Bear Fire does not exist anymore. We're either referring to the North Complex, which is the entire fire that extends all the way into the Plumas National Forest, or the North Complex West Zone, which is the part of the fire that's isolated in the Butte area. There is no other name that we're referring to from this point on. For the questions that were online that were referring to that, we are no longer using that term. With that, I thank you for tuning in, and we will be back tomorrow at 6:01. In about 10 minutes, we'll go live with that Spanish language press conference. Thank you very much.